So thank you for joining me today, Ross.
Nice to be here, Gemma.
Great to have you here. So before we dive into some trends, for those of the audience that might not be familiar with Wego, could you provide a quick outline on the group and its size and scope, particularly in terms of numbers of bookers and where they're based, so we can put the trends into real context?
Sure. Wego's dual headquartered, so Dubai, Singapore, and we do most of our tech work out of Singapore. We do most of our marketing, commercial biz dev out of Dubai, and that's the MENA region where we have most of our audience. I know that in the room we've got lots of hoteliers and hospitality people, but for us we think of MENA as the origin market. So we send a lot of people traveling for leisure and business around the region. So intra GCC and then sort of wider MENA region, but we also send them to out of the region. So in terms of some metrics for you, so we've done about 50 million app downloads now within MENA. There's about 10 million active users in any month at the moment. So we're still coming out of COVID, so still coming back to sort of previous levels. Back in 2019, before COVID, we're doing about $1.4 billion worth of bookings. We are heavily air skewed, but we also do a lot of hotel and other alternative accommodation. Okay. So I think we can talk about both sides of the...
Brilliant, thank you for providing that context. So now Wego and ClearTrip recently released a Travel Insights report.
Yes.
And that was revealing sentiments and readiness to travel in a post-COVID world. So I guess that's probably quite a good start. Sure. I think you surveyed, 4,390 residents from the UAE and Saudi Arabia?
Correct, yeah, we did... We did some proprietary user surveying, and then we sort of combined the insights from that with a lot of the data we collect on our platform. And a couple of key takeaways. So when we're looking at this summer, so we did this just before the ATM, so we crunched it about 3 weeks ago. So the forward bookings for this summer, if you compare them back to 2019 pre-COVID, key takeaway, the average trip is a week longer. So before COVID, it was about a 14-day, so 2 week. We're now at 22 days.
Wow.
So there's an extra week. So people are basically making up for lost time. So for a lot of consumers, COVID was kind of a binary experience, right? So you either, if you're unfortunate, you lost your job, so your income decreased dramatically. If you're fortunate enough to keep your job or your business, stayed afloat, a lot of the time you weren't able to go out. So a lot of people have saved a lot of money, and they're now sort of making up for lost time.
Partner, or you've done that internally?
So all of the surveys and all of the search data we have indicate that there is a lot of pent-up demand. So people are beginning to travel again. Our Q1 numbers based on revenue, so we're about 70% of what we're at in 2019.
So that's incredible.
We're not at, I heard some of the earlier sessions, people are already above 2019 levels. It would be nice if that was true, but we're at 70%. I know we work with a lot of the big players in the region, the hotels, the airlines, and the OTAs. Of the OTAs, I know for those focused on the region, we're somewhat ahead of the pack, but they're not too far behind us. So these markets still have a ways to go. And the key thing, the other key takeaway from the data and the survey we crunched, so average spend on trips this summer is about 60% higher than what it was pre-COVID. This is driven primarily by airfares at the moment.
Right, okay.
So I don't know if for any of you who book your own travel, you would have noticed this. And it's primarily because of supply constraints. Most airlines still have not got their networks rebuilt. They're not flying to all the destinations they used to, and they don't have the frequencies they used to. So you've got tons of consumer demand. Constrained air supply is resulting in higher than normal prices for tickets. Plus, because people have not had an opportunity to travel, they're splurging. I think we heard some comments on that earlier today as well.
And so is it very much leisure dominated? Because I know the hoteliers have seen the leisure come back, but still quite concerned about business travel. Have you noticed anything there? You know, is it coming back, and what patterns have you noticed? I know we talked earlier about how, you know, business travel has changed, working habits have changed. What can you tell us that you're noticing?
Yes, I mean, Wego's, we're about 2/3 leisure, maybe 1/3, you know, what we call self-managed business travel. So this is people who don't have a corporate travel agent to, you know, run around and do their bookings for them, but where, you know, where you've got somebody's mandated to go and figure out their own travel accommodation, travel arrangements, and then expense it. So, we see a lot of, you know, all the consultants flying into Riyadh on a Sunday morning, coming back Thursday night to Dubai. So that makes up about 1/3. If I went typically I go to tech and, you know, online travel conferences, not hotel, and, you know, the topic, you know, comes up, has Zoom forever changed, you know, the need for business travel? If you're in Silicon Valley, you know, the answer would be a clear yes. If you're talking to bankers in New York, I think in the Middle East, and I think for Asia, business travel is already coming back, and I think face-to-face is the way business gets done in this part of the world predominantly. I think Zoom and virtual meetings will augment, but I think business travel, I think by next year, you know, all the hoteliers in this represented in this room, I think you'll be back to the levels you were, if not before, pre-pandemic. And, you know, I already see this in my own company. People are, as soon as we're able to travel across borders, it started. So.
And what about the type of accommodation that's been booked? Because I think, you know, searches for not just hotels, but new type of accommodation, hotel apartments. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of, you know, a big increase in demand for alternative accommodation. So serviced apartments, unserviced apartments. And it's largely a function of length of stay also increasing. You know, if you're staying somewhere for 4 weeks, you know, you want an apartment probably rather than a hotel. Like the best hotels in the world, they get tired after a couple of weeks. So there's that. We've seen quite a bit of people who are sort of professional, sort of white collar workers who are choosing to, you know, move to places like, you know, Bali, you know, and base themselves there for a while. So like
digital nomads.
Correct. Yeah. So it's a meaningful trend. I wouldn't say it's a tsunami at this point. I don't think most people have that degree of flexibility with their employers, but it is significant. It is significant.
What other destinations have you noticed? Not necessarily just for digital nomads, but in terms of where are people booking? Where are they going to?
Yeah. So out of the MENA region, so the destinations that performed well through COVID, who you know, have developed a reputation for knowing what they're doing particularly well. Those destinations that are only just opening up are, you know, starting from a long way behind the pack. So I think that first mover advantage has served a lot of destinations well. We're seeing people gravitating towards places they're already familiar with rather than the more exotic. So that's pretty clear when we look at our booking numbers. I think that'll change over time, but for now, as people are, you know, having their first or second trip or first trip with family, they're playing it relatively cautiously still. You know, they don't want to get stuck somewhere if the rules change or if there's another outbreak. But yeah, I think give it a year probably. I think we'll see people getting more adventurous again.
So what I'm quite interested to know is, obviously, out of all these trends, some are very short term, and some are long term and more movements. Which of the trends are here to stay, and which ones should hoteliers be focusing on, and why?
Yeah, okay. I mean, something we saw in the numbers just actually a couple of weeks ago at ATM. So for the Saudi market, Visit Britain announced that, you know, it was now basically visa on arrival or e-visas for Saudis. So just removing that extra bit of friction makes a huge difference. So we saw an immediate pop in demand. So I guess hoteliers haven't got much to do about that, but, you know, anything you can do to remove friction from the process makes a big difference. Something I wish the GCC governments would get together and do is to put in place something like a Schengen visa. So if you've got a right to fly to one country in the region, you can automatically go to the others. That would be great to see. Or the equivalent of the APAC business travel card. So this is a visa, like if you have a passport from any one of the APAC countries, and you fly a lot for business, you apply for it, and you get a 3-year business visa to all the countries in the region. You don't have to think about visas for the next 3 years. So it's something I think would be great for the Middle East. From a consumer point of view, we having to apply for visas and the friction, it makes a huge difference in destination selection. We built into the Wego app, we built something a bit like a stock screener, but it's for destinations. And so somebody can tell us what their passport is, where they're resident of, and then we can tell them which destinations they can actually go to without a visa or on arrival, or how many days it's going to take. And you'd be surprised how popular that is. Very simple feature. But yes, so the more friction we can remove, the better.
Because I noticed when I was looking at your website, then the destinations that have come up, it says quarantine-free or COVID-19 test not required. So
sad,
again, frictionless travel. It's like flagging those elements up. What do you see in terms of booking trends for sustainable travel? Because we heard this morning, or this afternoon, from hoteliers about how they are starting to notice that guests are being more demanding in that area. Is there a function on your app where guests can search for sustainable travel options? Or what kind of trends are you noticing in that arena? Is that coming to the fore?
Yeah, so I think on the margins there's some demand for that. I think hoteliers have to be a little bit careful that this is something that's executed by the sort of the design and operation stage, and it's not just something left for the PR department. I think within the industry there is a lot of that, to be honest. It's also something which people who fly to think about. So how fuel efficient plane that I'm about to get onto. It's a complicated. There's a bunch of companies that will work with companies like ours to sell you carbon offsets to make up for how much carbon you're supposedly burning. But it's complicated, right? So the size of the plane, the age of it, what the engines, what the fuel's going into it, what the load is, you're up the front or up the back. By choosing a more efficient plane, have you brought forward the airlines? Are you thinking about how much energy went into actually designing, into building that plane versus the one that got scrapped? So it's complicated. Big picture, I think there's other industries that are going to have to do the heavy lifting to make any sort of significant impact on climate change. But I think there's some demand from consumers. So yeah, if I was running a hotel or an airline, I would be thinking about it.
Can you see the point coming where they will go onto your app, that credential for sustainability, where we'll get to the point where there's stricter regulations in place and people will make that conscious decision? Because I know Google's already set up a search function, as I'm sure you know, regarding the sustainability credentials. So do you think we'll get to that stage where it will make a big difference?
Like I said, I think it'll make a difference on the margins, but for most consumers, it's more about price and product than the environmental stuff. So, I would like to think yes, but realistically, I think no.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm conscious.
Maybe not yet.
Any other kind of trends that we're seeing? Region. I know you mentioned about some of the infrastructure projects and ways of travelling that you see in the future, and what how that might be what you offer.
Yeah. So, key thing that changed here recently, from the point of anybody who's come inbound, the e-visas are now a 20-minute project instead of a sort of a 1-week exercise. So hats off to the government for fixing that. That's excellent. We're beginning to see quite a bit of interest in both NEOM and Red Sea. I know there's a lot of building still to be done, but the early signs are that there is some interest. Another thing the government's doing here, which which I congratulate them on, is sort of taking responsibility for Umrah and giving it to the STA, and then sort of liberalising it so companies like us are able to help people find their Umrah, accommodation and ground transport. So that'll be good for travellers, but it's also going to be good for the industry. I think it'll just be more efficient. And when somebody's they come to Mecca, Medina for for their religious purposes, they might as well stay and see the rest of the country. So I think it makes a lot of sense from a tourism strategy development perspective. And then the other massive investments going into all the other mega projects around the country. It really is a case of build it and hopefully they will come, right? So think back to what Dubai was like 30 years ago. There wasn't much there, right? But they've managed to create something from nothing. I think the vision is it's on the money if they sort of stay the course and execute it. 10 years from now, it'll be very, very, very interesting. Put it that way.
Is my mic working? What percentage of your business do you think it will be in terms of bookings to Saudi?
Yeah, so we sort of turn it around. We look at Saudi as a sort of an origin market, but within that we do a lot of domestic. I would encourage, the government's doing a lot of domestic promotion, but I always, whenever I'm talking to tourism boards, I always remind them, if you can convince somebody to travel at home instead of traveling abroad, that's as good as bringing somebody in from abroad from a balance of payments perspective. So we do a lot of that. Saudi for us is already a very big market. I think we'll do about $500 million, something like that.
Wow.
Probably next year when we're fully out of COVID. Inbound is still much smaller than the outbound, but we can see the ratios changing over time, right? So it was the only travel. First time I came was about 10 years ago. The only inbound was really business or pilgrimage. So that's changed a lot. We see beginning to see the leisure demand, particularly from the Gulf. But I think it's going to grow rapidly from here.
Last question, because we're running out of time. Well, we've run out of time. What's your one big prediction for the future of travel? You're only allowed one.
Only one, okay. So COVID's been a catalyst for a whole bunch of change in lots of different sectors. So a lot of people who've only ever sort of bought their groceries in the supermarket are now sort of ordering. People who've never ordered food before are now comfortable, getting food delivered. People used to go walk into the bank and now comfortable with online banking. This has all changed out of necessity. This has been a trend, worldwide. I think travel's is experiencing exactly the same thing. So pre-COVID, best estimates for how much travel in the MENA region got booked online was about 40%. So 35-40% was back in 2019. The numbers at the moment are a little bit unclear because there's still a big recovery playing out. But I think by the time the dust settles next year, we may well be up to sort of like the 70-ish% mark. So comparable to what you see in Western Europe, US, or China.
Wow.
And I think a lot of the smaller offline agencies have not survived. So I think a lot of that business is moving online, but a lot of it is consumer preference. So people's behaviors and preference and level of comfort with digital booking tools is dramatically higher than it was. So for anybody who isn't already working on your online strategy, you've got significantly more reason to make it a priority now.
Brilliant. Well, I'd love to talk to you more, but we have to end it there. Thank you very much, Ross, for joining me today. Thank you.